Today, we're going to unpack the absolutely incredible story of how Sri Lanka built a world-class tech industry pretty much from scratch. Seriously, it's a journey that starts in a single classroom and ends with billions of dollars in revenue. So let's get into it. First things first, let's just start with a number. $1.5 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. It's a massive figure, and it represents something pretty amazing. Yep, that's how much money the country's information and communication technology, or ICT industry, brought in from exports in a single year. It's become a genuine pillar of the entire national economy. Which, of course, brings us to the big question we're tackling today. How on earth does that happen? How do you go from basically zero to becoming a billion-dollar global player? Well, it's a fascinating story about vision, smart planning, and a few truly dedicated people. You know, this whole massive industry didn't kick off in some fancy corporate boardroom. Nope. Like a lot of great things, it all started with a single seed, planted in a university. And what's just wild is how early these first steps were taken. I mean, think about it. Way back in 1967, the University of Colombo was teaching programming even before they had a computer to actually run the programs on. Then they teamed up with the University of Reading in the UK to bring in expertise. And finally, in '77, their first ever computer arrived, a tiny little HP Mini. This was ground zero, the very beginning. And just to give you a little perspective on that era, take a look at this. A top-of-the-line computer back then had about 256 kilobytes of memory. The phone in your pocket right now, it probably has over 8 gigabytes. That's more than 30,000 times the memory. It's an insane leap that just makes the work of those early pioneers even more impressive. Okay, so the seeds were planted. But a single seed doesn't just magically become a forest, right? You need architects, people to design the entire ecosystem. And in Sri Lanka's story, we're talking about a handful of real visionaries. These weren't just people who could write code. They were people who could see the big picture and design the blueprint for a whole new national industry. And a few names really stand out. You've got Professor Samarana Nayake, known as the father of IT, who was instrumental in shaping both education and national policy. Then there's Professor Indurawa, the father of the internet, who literally built the country's very first networks. And you also had champions like Mr. Yasa Karunaratne, who made sure Sri Lankan talent got noticed on the world stage. And this is what's so cool. It was never just about the technology itself. This quote, which was part of the national vision, says it all. The whole point was to use tech to lift up the entire country, to bring the benefits to every single person. It really shows you the human-centric goal behind all the code. So through the 80s and 90s, things really started to click into place. You had these three pillars working together. Professional groups set the standards. The government stepped up and created the first national computer policy. And, so importantly, the private sector started putting the tech to work in the real world, automating banks and developing software in local languages like Sinhala and Tamil, which was a total game changer for accessibility. Okay, so the foundation is solid. The players are in place, but the industry needed a catalyst, something to pour gasoline on the fire. And that, of course, was the internet. It was about to change everything. And honestly, you can just draw a straight line from those first networks to a billion-dollar industry. It starts with academics getting connected in 1990. By '95, the internet is available to everyone. And that connectivity, well, it directly gave birth to the business process outsourcing, or BPO industry around the turn of the millennium. From there, growth was just explosive, hitting that billion-dollar export mark by 2016. So what was the secret sauce? Why was this BPO boom so successful? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle was this number. It was about 30% cheaper for global companies to outsource their work to Sri Lanka. You take that massive cost advantage and combine it with a well-educated workforce that speaks English, and you've got a winning formula. And the impact on the economy was just staggering. The ICT and BPO sector shot up to become the country's fourth largest export earner. Think about that for a second. Almost a tenth of the entire nation's export earnings were now coming from an industry that didn't even really exist a couple of decades earlier. Now, when you have that kind of success, people start to take notice. The government realized it was time to go from just offering bits and pieces of support to creating a powerful, unified national strategy to really leverage ICT for the entire country. And that strategy was called the Sri Lanka Development Program. Its goal went way beyond just exports. This was a full-on roadmap to use technology to improve the whole country, better government services, a stronger economy, and, most importantly, a better life for every citizen, especially folks out in rural areas. And this wasn't just some policy document sitting on a shelf. It led to real, tangible projects. The Nina Sala project set up knowledge centers in villages to give people digital access. They launched the first government e-service so you could renew your car license online. No more long lines. And they started digitizing everything from national ID cards to hospital records. This was digital transformation in the real world. So, that brings us to today. The industry is a massive success story, for sure. But the journey is definitely not over. The future is a fascinating story of huge ambition bumping up against some pretty serious challenges. And when I say the ambition is huge, I am not kidding. After hitting that $1.5 billion mark in 2022, the goal was to double it to $3 billion in just 2 years. That is a ridiculously steep climb, and it tells you everything about the confidence and the drive that's fueling this whole sector. And the long-term goal is even bigger, a $15 billion digital economy by 2030. So on one side, you have all this momentum, hundreds of companies, a push to lead in new tech like AI and 5G. But on the other side, there are real roadblocks, a brain drain of skilled workers leaving, the need for more consistent policies, and some infrastructure that still needs work. And that's the central paradox the industry has to solve right now. Which leaves us right here, in the present moment. Can this island nation build on its incredible foundation, figure out how to overcome these modern hurdles, and turn all that ambition into reality? Can it become the next great digital powerhouse in Asia? Well, that is the $15 billion question.